Wholeness means to me being in a state of joy.
Wholeness means feeling complete, owning my authentic gifts.
Wholeness is really connected. Everything is connected to everything.
Wholeness is where we have access to all parts of ourselves.
So the first thing we want to do is to really, I think number one part of this episode is just kind of getting to know you a little bit.
Okay.
So I wanted to ask you, what is your current passion? Tell us about your current passion.
My current passion. I would say I'm in a learning phase. Like, I want to know all the things. And typically I don't read a lot of like self-help, or what genre would you say? Like nonfiction, maybe?
Yeah.
But you've been like giving me so many good books, and I've just been devouring them. So that's fun for me, but also it can be a lot sometimes, but I really like it.
Yeah. So I know there's always a book. I'm always recommending a book because I go through them. Either I can do audiobooks, I can go through them in a couple of days, but I learned so much from all these different areas. And so I love to share. So, but I get it. It's overwhelming. I think sometimes even just the vocabulary word, because I think sometimes people are like, I remember at one point somebody saying, you've got to let go. And then it's like, you need to hold on to yourself. It's like, what does that mean? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And so, or those kind of things where you're kind of figuring out what people mean. Cause some of them are opposite, you got to have non-duality or be non-dual. But the idea of duality is work, if you look at that definition, it's almost the same thing. So it's kind of funny different books have different ways of saying. And I was lost for a while trying to recognize you have to kind of know what people mean instead of just what they're saying, which is kind of tricky. That's kind of an obstacle, I think, for people. For me, it was, at least,
Yeah.
But
I love that. And I think one thing that I've been able to do a little bit better is, before it would be like, I have to absorb every piece of this book.
Right.
I have to take it all in. And now when I'm trying to like listen to my intuition a little bit more, I can say like, no, I don't really identify with that part. It's fine. But I really like this part, and not feel like I have to have all of it.
Right. Totally. Yeah, that is really good advice. Really, really good advice. I love it. And podcasts like these that have all different types of people that can show you different ways of thinking all at the same time are really great too. So that's good. So it's a good passion. Learning. Yeah. That's when people say, what is your favorite hobby? And I'll say learning.
Is it really? Has it been that way for a long time?
Yeah. I love learning. It's just when you're like, I never thought about that before, or things click and you're like, that's what that is. I love that. I'm addicted to that. I love it so much. So, I told you this year I'm trying to sing more, because I used to sing in the car, listen to music, and I haven't for years because I'm always listening to a podcast or a book. So I'm like, I got to get back to singing, get that throat chakra working again.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what is your passion right now? Sorry.
What is my passion right now? Oh, my passion right now is my new grandbaby. Like, I cannot get enough of that little one. And I almost want to film. I'm going to film him, just because the way he just moves and the facial expressions he makes, he is just so real and so authentic. Like, he doesn't hide any piece of himself, like nothing. And it's just interesting to see and to recognize that he doesn't have any reason. There's no shame at all. Like, and that's how we all were. That's how we all were should be, I think. I mean, that's the goal, is like to get rid of that shame. It doesn't matter what he does. He's not embarrassed.
Right.
He's not trying to put on a good face, like, even if he's just sitting there, he'll have like, it's like, if he's just like got to move, he uses his facial expressions to express the feelings he's having at the same time. And it's just mesmerizing to me that they come that way. He just today, in fact, he's 2 months old. He was born December 20th, and he's 2 months old today. And he already is so much of himself. It's crazy. It's just, and because I'm the grandparent, I just get to look and observe, and I just get to have the awe about it, and I love it. So that's my passion right now. It's just him. And right now they're living with us. That's why you might see a pet run in every once in a while. You might hear we have several pets living with us while we're all together for a few more weeks, hopefully. But in the morning they bring him to me. They'll my son's on his way out the door. He'll bring me him in the morning, and I get to play with him in the morning and snuggle. And yes, it's like that is a definite passion, and I've just been learning so much from him. So yeah, love it. Well, today we wanted to talk about a couple of things. One was we wanted to talk about how we're going to start using some monthly topics for our podcast and the platform. So if you follow us on social media, then you get the full effect about these topics. And we kind of just went through every month. We're focusing on a body, mind, spirit, soul, emotional, mental, spiritual, and physical bodies, and then kind of a theme off of that. So we're in February now, and we are focusing on opening the heart, which is the emotional body, opening the heart. So we recorded that podcast before, and a lot of our social media is geared towards kind of, looking at that and maybe daring to do that a little bit this month in February. Next month, we've got the mental body, which we're going to focus on manifesting and just kind of talking about manifesting. And then in April, we're going to do the spiritual body, and we're going to talk about awakening and what that means. And we'll have guests on the podcast that we talk about that with, and it'll just be kind of good to have some focus, I guess you could say. Chalene's part of the Wholeness Network now, and she just has all these great ideas. So I'm thrilled to be able to, make those come to pass, some of her great ideas. So that's what we're going to do. That's our focus. Anything you want to say about that, Chalene?
I think it could be something that if it's something that you are wanting help with, that you have a month to gain some more information on. Mm-hmm. And if it's not, then you can just wait for the next month, I guess.
Right. I mean, sometimes the first thing kind of just plants a seed, it's like the first time things come in, sometimes they just plant a seed, and then when it comes around again, you kind of think, oh yeah, I remember that. We all do things in our own different capacities. So it's just allowing those, here, my puppy dog, hearing those, little moments. In fact, we'll talk about that a little bit. I was looking at some notes today about that those little voices, allowing those little voices, those little whispers to pay attention, to help us pay attention to the bigger things in our lives, So, yeah. So today we want to focus on, we called this episode Wholeness Out Loud, because we just kind of wanted to start again with the idea of wholeness. And, all of those themes that we bring up every month are really about, creating wholeness within ourselves and what that means. And so I wanted to start with a quote by Carl Jung, and I want to talk about him in a minute, but this is an amazing quote. Wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration of the contraries. So Carl Jung, which is spelled Jung, but it's Jung, I guess is what it's pronounced. He was a fellow of Sigmund Freud, but he kind of broke off because he started to have this theory that he proposed that beyond an individual's personal unconsciousness, so the things we're unaware of, which are maybe our repressed memories, our experiences, anything that's unique to us, he said that there was a deeper layer of the unconscious that we are shared by all human beings. And it's kind of complicated to think about, but he says that there's these universal symbols and patterns and ideas that are innate to the human psyche, and they are inherited, not learned. And if you think about even facial expressions, the expression of happiness and sadness, those things are universal across different languages. So even though the word sad will be different a million times, the expression of those are the same. And then that's kind of this shared unconscious experience that we're having, which, when people say we're interconnected, those kind of things. And he says he believes that these kind of symbols and myth, they help us have our myths and our and cultural motifs, things like that, things across diverse societies. We have these symbols that come up. And one of those symbols is that seed of life, or the flower of life, the seed of life, which is the Wholeness Network. And what's interesting to me, that symbol is found in ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia. It's in ancient Egypt. The Judeo-Christian traditions connect it with the creation story in the book of Genesis. And it's seen as the symbol of the 7 days of creation, and each circle represents a day of creation. So in the New Age and spiritual movements, it's used in meditation and healing practices and energy work. And in Hinduism, it symbolizes and is associated with divine feminine energy and the union of masculine and feminine energy. And I just think it's amazing. I was watching a documentary about ancient symbols. And it was just amazing that these symbols, they've been used across millennia, so thousands of years, and they show up in different parts of the world. So oceans apart, and they'll have this symbol that they have used. And, you're like, they're not sending a letter across, there's no really communication between these ancient civilizations, and they're years apart, right? But this symbol, the seed of life, shows up and holds significance in these various cultures and spiritual traditions. And it most often represents themes of creation and interconnectedness and the underlying unity of existence. And this is the very idea that Jung had about this unconscious, collective unconsciousness, that he was talking about. And it plays a crucial role in the process. This unconscious, this creative, this collective, I should say, collective plays a part, because, with this collection, then I kind of know where I am. I kind of know it helps us have our individual part of ourselves, because we can recognize what comes from us and what comes from outside of us, apparently, according to him, and helps us integrate the various aspects of our psyche, to achieve personal wholeness and self-realization, is what he says. So I want to just, because with that in the background, I want to say that quote one more time, because wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration of the contraries. So it's really about the opposites, the parts that feel like they don't belong. It's really about integrating them into ourselves as an individual, and then that happens as a whole, as all of us together. But wholeness really is about accepting all the parts of who we are, and allowing them to be, allowing them to grow. And it speaks of inner harmony and completeness, is what we talk about. But it's a journey and a process. And I kind of want to just talk about that for a minute. It's a journey, a process, and a destination all in one, that leads to a deeper understanding of our essence and our purpose. And I love, I'm one that loves a duality. I've told a million times about my experience with the word help and how that became, that was if I said the word help, it's both calling to me to help, and it's calling for help at the same time, in the same exact words. Both opposite definitions exist. And it just opened up a world to me about this complexity that we have in our lives, and being an individual and recognizing that that's okay to have parts that are our own and are different and are unique, and that we can work within the whole of society and contribute to it because of our differences, because of our these integrated, these contrary parts that he talks about, our contraries.
So the contraries are parts of ourselves that feel like that they're at war against each other, or that we don't like?
Probably both, I think.
Oh,
I think it's both. I think it's just, I think that word contrary, we don't use it very much. And so, as far as, but, in the early 1900s, late 1800s, the contraries was the word he chose, but it was about it. I think it's just, those parts of us that feel like they don't belong. They feel like they're opposite. So here's an example. I think, my kids have had different people that have taught them or led them, right? And some of the most amazing people are ones that have a backstory where maybe they weren't the greatest teenagers, actually,
Yes.
right?
Okay.
They weren't the greatest teenagers. And yet here they are supporting my teenager in like the most amazing way. So now back when they were a teenager, would we want that contrary part to be gone? Absolutely. You'd be like, we got to get rid of that contrary.
Okay.
But if we look at things from a place of wholeness, here that contrary place that at this point in life needed to go away is now the very thing that makes them a better person at helping my children move forward, right? So when we think of contraries, the things we want to get rid of, we have no idea the power that they hold, and I think especially on, with social media, that we see all the parts we're supposed to have and want to get rid of the parts we're not supposed to have. We are grateful for that person's contrary. I'm grateful for the contrary of that person that supported and uplifts and gives experience to my children. So if that happens, if I can see that happening in other people and appreciate their contraries, I don't feel like it's much different to appreciate the contraries within myself. I have to.
Here's what's hard is when you're going through that contrary, right? Like,
yes.
How can you accept that, or how can you, and maybe you don't really accept it until after it's over, but I see, for example, you have a teenager who's being a jerk or whatever, going through their teenagerhood,
right?
And that someday that's going to come to benefit them, but you're still trying to move through this,
right?
You just have that in the back of your mind because you can't like just allow them to do whatever they want. I don't know if that makes sense.
I know exactly what you mean. But this is, what it comes down to is, so what your child does, right? What your child does, I have no internal reaction about. I'm like, yeah, that's hard. You're like, he drives me crazy. She's killing me over here. He's making me nuts, and I'm like, yeah. And I want to be empathetic and I want to hear you, but I am not having the same anxiety about that. Going back to my grandbaby, right? My his parents, when he starts to cry, have this, visceral, like, I gotta fix this baby. I gotta fix this baby. I know. I've been there. I've done it. I'm like, he's not bothering me. He just, what does he need? Let's figure it out. I'm not having that emotional response within myself, because it's not me. So because it's not invoking a response to everybody is a clue that there's something in that, what's happening that's in my unconscious, or it's contrary inside of me. It's not contrary to everybody.
Okay.
It's contrary to me, right? And so number one is just recognizing when we're getting upset or when we're stressing out. Because for me, and it might be different for other people, but I mean, a lot of that stress, a lot of that anxiety is more about because I'm worried about what other people will think, or we're not supposed to be this way. Everybody else is over here, we're over here. And that feels really uncomfortable. I'm not saying don't stop, it's not like you can say, stop making that feel uncomfortable. It's just recognizing how uncomfortable that is. And then moving into compassion for yourself about, I really, really want plan A over here. I want plan A. And then, because the truth of the matter is that when that plan B shows up, it's not there all the time. But when we're feeling that contrast or the contrary between what we plan A and plan B, it's miserable. But there are times when it's not. And so we start to recognize when it's not right in our face, when it's like, today I'm okay with it. Because there is, sometimes you're like, this plan B, it's okay. Like, there's good things about it. And really pay attention to those times when it's not bothering us. And then when it is bothering us, recognize, okay, this time it's coming up for me. And when it's coming up for me, then, then there's things I look at about myself. Am I tired? Am I hungry? Am I overwhelmed? What do I need? What do I need at this moment? And really answering that question helps me. It's not going to make the problem go away, but it's going to help me get into that place where I'm more like, okay, plan B is where we're at, and I'm better at it. But also, when we're triggered, sometimes when we're triggered with our plan B, we're panic mode, we're it's like stressful. And that's a little different from, and recognizing that we're going to have times where we're going to grieve plan B, plan A, we're going to wish, and that's different. So sometimes if it's like, okay, something's up for me, I'm anxious, blah, 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 blah. Okay, what do I need? This and this and this. And then there's the other times when it's like, I just really want plan A, like plan A was just what I needed. And hopefully we have someone close to us that will listen to us talk about how much we wish we had plan A. And it's amazing how if we really grieve it within a few short minutes, maybe an hour, I don't know, we kind of take a deep breath and we're like, okay, I can do this. So the grieving is really important when it's time to grieve. And maybe that happens when we're anxious too. But sometimes for me, at least when I'm anxious, I'm just in a mood, I'm just in a mood. I just need to do something for myself to make myself feel. Yeah, I need to feel it. So I don't shove it down. I just say, okay, here I am in this thing. This is here. And again, hopefully I have that person I can talk to and say, but I'm going to use language like, I'm feeling it, like I really want plan A. I just need plan A right now. I'm just struggling. I don't like being different than everyone else. I don't like how it feels to not have what I thought would happen show up, or whatever. And hopefully you have an understanding person, because sometimes, I'm saying it and I'm not nice 100% about it.
Right.
But hopefully, but if, my partner or my friend who's listening to me can just say, yeah, I hear that, I hear what you're saying. Oh man, that just helps so much. It just makes the biggest difference to say, okay, it's going to be, I can take a breath and what do I need? What do I need? And listen to that. I think listen to that.
So then accepting that, moving through that, then are you accepting the contrary? Is that kind of what he's talking about? Or?
I think so. He says really wholeness is like acknowledging and embracing all the facets of our being, the light and the shadow, the strengths and the vulnerabilities, the joys and the sorrows. It's a recognition that we are not defined by these isolated parts, but we're actually like this intricate tapestry of our experiences, emotions, and aspirations, which I want to talk about for a little bit. But so that's the thing is if you, I think it takes 2 or 3 times, honestly, for you to recognize when you're in the space of I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like this. And recognizing oh, here we are, we're in this part, which we have to be. We wouldn't have the happiness part. We wouldn't have this is okay, I can do this, if we didn't have these moments
to show us what we can't do or what we don't want to do.
Because we live in contrast, right? We live in contrast. We don't have, our brain doesn't come up with new information. It just contrasts it. So we have to have a point here in order to understand what the next point is, right? So the more that we recognize and integrate those parts and say this part, oh, here's my struggle, and allow it to be, because it's so amazing how quickly we shut it down. Like I said, watching my grandbaby, just him moving, he uses these crazy faces to help, to move he can hardly move his sit up, right? But it's if he, his face shows every little thing he sees. And I look at the rest of us and I'm like, wow, we are having those feelings just like him. And we're not making any facial expression. We're just
Right.
But the expression of them is how they move, So in fact, one of the hints my husband will share is, when you're not feeling good, actually move your facial expressions to express it. So really exaggerate within your facial expressions the feeling that you're having, and maybe even give it a sound, like a grunt or a cry or growl if you have to, but give it a sound, and it really does express out, right? And then that's allowing it to be. You're allowing it to exist. Where we spend so much time just making it go away.
Well,
And I do that too. You're like,
taught us that we had to be like perfect and statue. Like,
right.
Where did is that one of our understood consciousness? Because we all kind of have that of like, I don't want to be, and maybe it's the whole different thing. I don't know, but
yeah. Well, I think
understood.
I think in our society we have, the different generations, and there's a generation that was quiet. They came back from war and they are quiet. And I don't know if it was the same before then. Like, it was a big impact in our environment, in our society and environment after the world wars.
Fascinating.
When the people came back and we did not talk about it. That was I don't know if that was always the case. And so we learned that lesson really, really, really well. And I think we moved into like, okay, then we became separated into this group that said, let everything out. Maybe the hippie stages, it was like, let everything out, let everything be. And then what that did too is that it entrenched the people more into be quiet about it. So then you've got this really polarized points of view. And I think we're starting, I don't know if children born after 2000.
I'm telling you, they are so bold and open. Like my daughter will talk about her period to boys, and it's no big deal.
Yep.
I would have withered up and died because we just didn't do that. But it's for her. It's not embarrassing.
No.
It's just part of who she is. Like, I am so impressed. I know.
It's amazing. I know. I think it's for the better, and people struggle. Like, they complain about this younger generation, and they do things differently, but it's like, hey, if I lose that, then I lose this. And I really think we need this over here. I really think we need a societal norm that lets people be individuals. Right. Think about this. When I was a kid, we had in the 80s, right? The 80s, you could not wear a pair of pants with any kind of, like, it had to be tight at the bottom. Like, we didn't have.
Oh, the pegging. Did you peg?
Yeah. Yeah, you could not have any width at the bottom of your pants, like none. And I have a vivid memory of being in the mall and being like those weirdos that wore bell bottoms, like insane, right?
Even just like a little bit open. It's like, ew, with my parents, I'd be like, what are you doing?
And we had zippers at the bottom of the jeans to make sure they were tight around the ankle, like tight. And now, like, you can walk into a store and find every shade of width,
That's true.
And then after, but I remember in the 90s, we had the bootleg, that the bootleg was the new thing. So then you couldn't have a tight pant. You had to have an open leg. You had to have some kind of a shape at the bottom, the opposite. And now we're, since 2000, it's kind of stayed consistent where you can have a bell bottom, you can have a tight one, and it's just a thing. Just simple like that. Simple little changes like that we used to have. Think about, I was trying to tell my kids the other day, we used to have to pay. When me and my husband first met, we would have to pay to talk to each other because he was long distance.
Oh, yeah.
And so you would sneak, you'd like worried about what the bill, how much the bill was going to be when it came, Now the kids, that's just nothing. Like, things have just opened up. Remember we used to have to pay for texts, right? You'd have like 100 texts a month, and that was like huge. Now it's just the way it is. And I feel like the trend is moving it and changing and opening up and unfolding. And but to some people, a lot of people, that's a part B plan, to be open and to be expansive and to allow things to grow and change. So there's a lot of uncomfort right now. When I was researching, I found, that we have this tapestry, that we're actually an intricate tapestry, and it kind of gave 3 areas of our tapestry, that they are our experience, our emotions, and our aspirations. And I just thought that was interesting for a minute, because first we have our experiences, which, for good or bad, right? They're going to create this tapestry of who we are. When we talked about plan A and plan B, so my plan A is going to be someone else's plan B. So the idea of who's right and wrong, what's better and worse, that's not even a question to have. Like, there's just no point in having that question. That's why there's a possibility for me to integrate that and to have that be okay, because my plan B is someone else's plan A. It just is. It's just the way that it is. And so our experiences are the ones that kind of create whether we want plan A or whether we want plan B. A lot of times those experiences happened in childhood. These little moments, those little pieces of data that program our minds and program ourselves to think a certain way or to be a certain way, right? And then along with those emotions along with those experiences, we have emotions, which again, someone might have an experience, one person might have an experience and have this emotion, and someone might have the exact same experience and have a different emotion, maybe even in the same family, right?
Yeah.
There could be a family whose parents got divorced, two sisters, and they have very different emotions about that.
Yes.
And so our individual emotions are going to be part of that tapestry. But I loved how it brought up the point of our aspirations are also part of that. And I think that's so important, because I think we sometimes in healing work, especially, we work so much on our experiences and our emotions. And we feel like we have to kind of get those figured out before we have aspirations, And according to this, they're all three there. They're equal. They're equal parts of this tapestry. And I don't know why we do that. We don't give ourselves permission to have aspirations like we should.
Yeah, I think we don't give ourselves time to think. I listened to a thing about Mr. Rogers, and he was talking to somebody, and someone was asking him, like, what are you afraid of or something? And he was talking about, I'm afraid that people now aren't going to have time to think. And the quiet that we need, because our world is so noisy.
Yes.
And he was talking about friends that he had that allow him time to think, and how precious that was to him. And I think that was where our aspirations sometimes come from. If we're just doing, like, for example, I could clean my house all day long and still feel like I'm starting at zero every time.
100%. Yes.
And it doesn't allow me any time to, well, maybe I can think while I'm cleaning, but I'm not working towards those true soul passions like you were talking about at the beginning. Like, we all have passions, whether or not we think about them. I really do think we all have them.
Yeah. Yeah. A passion is another word for aspiration, I think.
Yeah.
It's just like they're similar. They're the same concept. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we think they have to be, like, we think that they've got to come in at a certain time, or that we have to do this first before they can come in, or that they have to be big and grand,
Right.
If you have an aspiration to have a clean house, there's a really different energy about having an aspiration to have my house clean rather than a duty.
That's true.
What I mean?
That's true.
And I've worked with clients before where I've tried to get them to understand, if you don't have an aspiration for a clean house, why are you cleaning your house? Because we're supposed to.
Out of shame?
Out of shame, right? Yeah. And so just to sit with that for a minute, like, if it's like, I don't care if my room is messy. Like, my daughter's this way. It was a hard lesson for me, because I feel very accomplished when the house is clean. She does not have that accomplishment. When her room is all organized, it's anxiety for her. She likes things to be busy. She likes things to be in transition. She likes things to be flowing and moving and changing, where I would like them to be all put away. All organized. And for me, it's like where my brain is, but it's like, oh, I know where it is. It goes there because that's where it belongs. She does the same thing, only to me. Her room is chaos to me, right? But she is very much more comfortable in a chaotic or a changing kind of environment, Her aspiration is not my aspiration,
Yes.
And so really women have to do that. We're handed aspirations so many of the time. We're handed an aspiration of motherhood where there are some people that is not like they, when you have that passion, the word passion is even better because with the word passion comes almost a physical response in your body,
Yeah, that's true. It makes me excited.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a response my body has when I think about my passions. And what do you say to someone, a mother, a woman, let's say a woman who does not have that response when it comes to motherhood? It just isn't there. Do you tell her just to create that response? You're doing something wrong, and a lot of times she does. She keeps trying things over and over again. And what she's really trying to do is create a sensation in her body that is a response. Can't create those responses very well unless we traumatize. Then we can. We can have a traumatized response. But those feelings of joy, those feelings of love, those feelings of attraction, we don't really make those up. They are part of that unconscious that is innate in all of us humans. We know what that feels like, even though we could never really describe it, right? If you're like, I am attracted to that person, I can't really describe it in words, but we all understand this feeling together. If I started to say I'm attracted to them, what I mean,
Yeah, right.
If I start to say I get those tickles in my tummy, I can start to describe it a little bit, but it's never justice to what the experience is.
Right.
And aspirations, I think those passions are the same way. And we just don't. My point that I really wanted to get here is just that we need to allow those aspirations, those passions to be there just as much needed. We're needing to allow them to live as much as the dark. A lot of times we figure out, well, I got to just accept myself and I need to accept my flab the way it is. And that's part of it.
Right.
But more often than not, we don't even think to say, I need to allow this dream of mine to be real, to speak, to just live. It doesn't mean I might not achieve my aspirations. If I want, I might not achieve it, but that's different than having them. I really want this. And
so like a tapestry, right? Every piece is touching every other piece, correct?
Yes.
So then is the goal to incorporate your passions into your experiences?
Yeah, I love that idea.
And be
emotions
about it a little bit more rather than just like, oh, whoops, that just happened to be next to each other. It's like, oh no, I put that there.
Yeah.
I don't know. How would you do that? So let's keep with the cleaning.
Yeah.
How
Okay.
you incorporate a passion? So maybe listening to a book for you while you're cleaning is incorporating those two together, and you're like, this is exciting. I want to keep going reading this book, so I'll just clean a baseboard.
Yes. I was talking about this the other day when my kids were young, especially. I still kind of have it now, but I had my laundry day, and it was my day I looked forward to because that day I didn't have to get dressed in what I wanted to get dressed in. I could watch whatever shows I wanted. I could eat whatever I wanted. It was like stay at home day and just chill out and relax and do the laundry. And I loved laundry day because I'd given myself permission to not have to show up the way I had to show up all the other times, like I could just, if I wanted to take a nap, I could take a nap, and so, my experience was, I love laundry day. And my emotion was, just excitement because, tomorrow's laundry day. Like I would get so excited. And it was because of those other, but I created that for myself, I created that for myself to say, here's an area that I don't love. How can I make it better?
Yeah, because it's not inherently exciting.
Right. Right. Most people don't think that. But for me, it totally is. I'm like, I love the laundry. But that is all because of this integration of those three parts that we talked about.
Yeah. I love that. And I was even thinking about if going to work is hard for you, maybe expressing yourself with certain clothes or earrings or makeup, and just, I think I'm excited to start thinking about that, how I can incorporate some of my passions into the drudgery or the things that you have to do.
Well, and that's why you can go backwards. So here's my, these things I don't really love. So I want to create an emotion. What emotions do I want to feel? So with the laundry, I would have felt dread or imposed upon, or like I had to these
disgust.
feelings. Yeah, disgust. So what do I want to feel? I wanted to feel like cozy. I would say I wanted to feel cozy.
That's such a good word.
I wanted to feel like I'd accomplished something. I wanted to feel lazy. I really wanted to feel lazy. I wanted to feel like relaxed, so then I'm going to say, okay, what makes me feel those things? So cozy, that means I'm going to wear comfortable clothes. I'm going to probably turn on lamps or light a candle. What does that feel like? And then once you create the experience of those emotions, then you're done, right? Like you invoked those feelings. If these things make you happy, then you invoke those and then they make you happy. It's simple. And we do more of those things, because that's the thing, if we can't make up those. So if we're just telling ourselves, this is fine, this is fine, this is fine.
Yes.
We think we're not fine. But if we can invoke those sensations in our body, have that response, it's done. Just like we talked about before.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
Let's say you're having body image issues.
Okay.
And how could you start to invoke loving feelings towards your body when all you can think of is like, because, they'll say like, oh, just love your body. And you're like, yeah, but I don't. Like right now or whatever stage you're in.
Right.
Especially as I age, like things change. And I'm like, holy cow, I was not prepared for this.
Yes.
So walk me through that.
Okay, so we're feeling, first of all, we have to recognize, again, my body shape is someone else's goal. This is seriously someone else's goal that I'm sitting in right now.
Okay.
And what does that feel like? What is that like to kind of shift that up a bit to say, okay, to recognize what we're doing is we're saying my experience is my experience. It's not the truth. It's not valid for everyone.
Okay.
So it's my feeling. So, and then we want to, we really want to talk about the response we're having. What is that response we're having? Is it disgust or is it shame? Is it I don't know what's the word for it, but it's like, sometimes we think, oh, I've allowed, it's a false belief. This is the standard that something has to live at. and I've created this
perfectionism. Like I'm not showing it perfect. I think.
Yeah. And who invented that perfection,
right.
Who invented that perfection, and, to recognize that that's an invention, because again, I've, talking to different men, we women have a very different view of what our bodies are supposed to look like to men.
Yes.
And, for instance, I'm sure your husband has been, doesn't care when your makeup's off, like a lot of us,
right.
we won't go out the house without makeup on, but like our husband will be like, you don't need to wear any makeup, and I think we need to allow some of that in to, especially to females, I'm sure there's a lot of males that have body image issues for sure. And they can do the same thing. But we women, our body issues are more about, because we've determined that our tapestry has to look this certain way when it's just not. And so when we can kind of open up some space there. So if we say, hey, my goal weight is, and vice versa. I've known women, I've done weight loss things. I've known women who they struggle. I knew this one woman, she struggled because she's so skinny. Like she hates how skinny she is. She hates it. And I'm just looking at her like, are you nuts?
I can't process that.
Yeah, it can't even, you don't even process that. But to her, all of her experiences, all of her emotions, all of her aspirations told a different story, right? Told a different story. And so when we kind of, for me at least, if I can kind of recognize, it just leaves some space there where it's like, this is not truth. This is not big T truth. This is my programming. Then I can kind of say, okay, then I can kind of, and it's good. Like this, I would seriously do this. I did this with little kids. Draw a picture of that feeling, like that experience, like that feeling of when you're, it's like, here is my this part of me that I don't like, showing up again, like telling me I'm not good enough, telling me I'm not skinny enough, telling me I shouldn't look the way I am. Like, oh, that's just Bob. Bob's back. There's Bob. Bob, go away. I don't like you. And you're just kind of like making some separation between who you are, and what's you're thinking.
Okay.
Different things. Those are very different things. Things that we think and who we are very different, but we integrate. We think those are the same a lot.
Right.
A lot.
Okay.
There's some space in there, but, and then, we recognize, you can almost go into two, like, so when it comes into losing weight, I can't, or I won't, I would say, give up. I'm not going to not eat certain foods that just doesn't work for me. Like, so for me, it's like, okay, there's eat these foods or there's be really skinny. And it's like, I'm going to find a balance between those two.
Because food can be a passion. Food is enjoyable. Yes. Right.
It is solely, in this day and age, I tell people, I'm like, if you're not slapping the table, like, oh, this is so good. then don't eat it. And I'm telling you, if you slap the table with like, this is so good, this is so good. Then you're fulfilled. You're actually fulfilling. Where sometimes if we're eating and we're not feeling that, we're actually trying to feel another aspect, right? We're trying to feel another emotion. We're trying to make that go away. And again, emotions are sensations. And if I am really full, I don't have room for sensations. And then I numb out. That's how we numb out, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the great ways to numb out is to get really full, right? So I wouldn't say don't get full. I would say eat what just feeds your passion. Eat the things you're passionate about. Make the food feel like just be an experience with emotions, that are great and good to have. You can start with, make a list. Here's foods that I'm passionate about, and then eat those every day. That's what naturally thin people, that's how they're naturally thin. Like if you took two people and I don't think, if you took two people and fed them 5,000 calories a day, each person, like the one person's not going to be a skinny stick. Like they're not just going to not have that. They would put on weight. They would put on weight. A thin person would put on weight if they all of a sudden started eating 5,000 calories a day. The reason why they aren't, because they balance it out. It's not, I have a son. Food is not his passion. He likes certain food, but there's no passion to it. He's got other things he'd rather do. They're just not his. My dad was the same way.
Wow.
He went on a big cruise and gained, I think, 20 pounds on this cruise. He enjoyed it, enjoyed the food. And then when he came home, he just said, he just went back to his old ways and the weight just came off. It's just not a passion, or it's a passion sometimes, or, it's just not. So again, there's another, that's their plan A, which is my plan B. I wish I was like that, but I'm not. And so I want to find, so to me, I'm always, rather than taking away, which is why I like the word wholeness, because that brings things together. It doesn't separate them apart. So I would rather bring in things. I'd rather bring in joy. I'd rather bring in excitement and passion and feeling, kitty. I'd rather bring those in rather than say, okay, I'm not going to eat this food. I'm not going to do this. What am I going to do? What can I do? Maybe my body shape isn't, so like I'm going to learn how to dress so that I can look in the mirror and say, oh, that looks good. And then dare to walk like you feel like you look good, right? Dare to show up in the world out loud with that feeling of like, I look good today.
Yes.
Because that will come as a response to, it's like, oh, I like this outfit, and that's allowed. That's okay.
Confidence is a great feeling to have.
It is. And there's ways to invoke that with, by dress or by whatever, as far as our bodies go, right?
And I love that picture because that shows me the contraries, right? You have a body shape that might not be what you idealize or whatever, but you're dressing in a way that is, you're not hiding it necessarily, but you're allowing the beautiful parts of it to be.
Yeah. You're complimenting the parts. Yeah. Because there are parts of you that other people would kill for.
Right.
You know, they'd be like, oh, you got those eyes, or you've got I mean, here's an example. I remember I was dating with my husband, and he's like, do you know what I think is really like hot about you? I think he says, you got big hips.
Serious?
And I was like, gulp, you know, but he was completely sincere. And in that moment, I mean, it was just like, because I was like, oh my gosh, like,
whoever
I would have never, you know, I would never say like, look at my white hips. And you know, he's like to him, like he's like, and to this day, it's like, what's your favorite part? I like the hips. Like wow, isn't that amazing?
Yes,
I'll be like, can you explain to me more about that? He's like, what do you mean? Like to him, it's so real. You know,
it's like the attraction thing. You can't put words to it.
Yeah, but words to it. So, but for me, I thought, okay, I need to kind of just chillax about my opinions do not match other people's opinions. So I shouldn't listen to those. Maybe sometimes I shouldn't always think that my opinions are correct, because that was mind blowing. I would have never thought that. I would have never thought your wide hips. You know, you're like, I have wide hips, you know, like, I mean, it was just, I know, but then it was like, no, you know, like, don't go off into the weeds about it. Like, he was sincere. He was like, I love that about you.
Wow.
Like the little skinny, straight up and down, no hip woman is not attracted to him. He likes shapes. He wants a shape. I'm like, well, that's convenient.
Okay.
It works out then. You know, that works out.
Oh, I love that.
I love that.
Hilarious.
You know, the other thing I was researching and came up with is like, you know, wholeness is not about perfection. That's the thing. You know, it's not about perfection. It's about authenticity.
Could you say that wholeness does not equal perfection?
Right. I think so.
I do too.
I think, you know, I think wholeness is the perfection we will achieve. You know, that is ultimate perfection, is the wholeness, which is not what we would say is no flaws, right?
Yes.
Unflawed. And it's about authenticity, is, you know, and authenticity is so different between different people. And again, we don't know it until we feel it authentically in ourselves. This is true for me, you know, and then we build upon that.
It takes some experimenting, I think, to find that authenticity, because I think we are so, like, the star belly sneeches came to my mind. Like when we get into childhood, like you said, the baby is like totally themselves, and you get to childhood and you start to notice that things are different. You don't want to be that. So you start to be like everybody else. And I think you start to, and maybe like you said, the kids nowadays are really a lot less like that. But I know for me, like, experimenting with different things, like in high school, that's when people separate into like the goths and preppy and all of that. Like, they're experimenting with their authenticity, finding out, like, is this who I want to be?
Right.
And maybe it is, and maybe it isn't, but you can mark it off the list and go find something else.
Right. But as a parent, is that terrifying? Yes. You know what I mean? It's like, let's just not do that. But I think it comes around quicker if they, you know, learn that doesn't work for me, because in that time period, they're also trying to individuate themselves, you know, and grow up beyond their parents. And so they're trying to find they are going to push against the boundaries that you set in order to learn that, you know, totally.
And it freaks us out every time, even though we did it too.
We did it too. We did it too. It's so true. It's so true. But authenticity, it's, you know, it is messy. It is imperfect. It is beautifully flawed. I mean, it's so, I mean, if you just had the same tapestry over and over again, there would be no beauty in that, you know, there'd be no beauty in the same tapestry. It is the uniqueness. It is the contraries that make it beautiful, you know, and it, you know, when we have to really kind of consciously celebrate our gifts and our talents And we also need to acknowledge our limitations and areas for growth, right? So both of those at the same time, we celebrate our unique gifts and talents. Here's what I have to provide to the world, to the whole, right? Here's my portion. And, I don't do it like that person. And I can easily go to shame and say, and I should, but I can say, no, this is how I do it. And it's a practice, wholeness is a practice, which is why we have the library to help you every single day feel like you can handle your plan B. Because I think most people live in plan B.
I would say all, but
I think so.
That's a topic for another day, maybe.
We put our plan A on social media, but we live in plan B, right?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. I loved this last little idea about embracing wholeness. It said, embracing wholeness is a profound act of self-love and self-acceptance. It's about embracing our inherent worthiness and reclaiming our power to create a life that is aligned with our deepest desires and values. And just to kind of separate that out, I just think one of the words that comes to me is the word reclaim. And we all have lost some of our power along the way. We all have lost some of our power along the way. And so reclaiming that power back through discovering, so in order to have that life that we're looking for, that it said in that quote, aligned with our deepest desires and values, we have to know our deepest desires and our deepest values. We have to know those first.
Right.
So that we can go back and reclaim those areas where we lost that power, where we can reclaim that power back. And when we reclaim that power back, and when we know our deepest desires and our deepest values, then that's when those sensations come in, those reactions come that just push us along the way. Like they take over and we just flow, right? We just get into the flow of those sensations, and we don't have to invoke them anymore. They don't come up in our brain. They're not here. They don't come here. They come in our bodies. They come because they're a reaction to an experience. And so when we know, and they come from that desire, that value, it's like, this is not in my values, or with one of my values is connection. It's like, if I look through the list of values, which we have a list of values in the library under downloads. And you want to come up with maybe 2 or 3 at the most. You just want 2 or 3 values, because then it coordinates you in your so people would say like, oh, my family's my value, but mine's a little different. Mine's connected. Mine's connection. Yeah. So I don't feel good. I feel yucky if there's disconnection. And so I'm going to do all I can to stay connected to my family, because that's my value, is the connection, right? So that's where the family comes in. It's not that I don't value them. It's that for me, other people might say my value is, truth. So they're going to speak truth all the time. They want to have truth, and that's how they're going to interact in their family. But to me, that it's about connection. My goal is to always be in connection. I know that is a value of mine that I'm going to work from, I'm going to live from. And my deepest desire is to stay connected, to people. So that's something I had to learn for myself, because I get panicky when disconnection happens. It doesn't feel good to me, because it doesn't fit within my values. And to know those, to recognize those, and to feel those enough where you feel that reaction, that sensation inside that says, that's my value, that's my, that's meaningful to me. But I think that's wholeness. I think it's discovering that. I think we kind of are in a hurry, feel like I've got to hurry and find my wholeness. I think it's a never ending process.
Right. I
think it's discovery.
Yeah. Finding wholeness is in the act of trying to find it.
Yes.
Or happy wholeness, maybe I should say.
Yeah. Yep. I think so too.
Feel empowered every day with wholeness videos, meditations, downloads, classes, and more by joining the Wholeness Library at thewholenessnetwork.com.